of pop culture, hear about the experiences from these industry professionals, and learn how you can start preparing to find a career you love in the field of pop culture. So let's meet our guests. I'm going to just let you guys introduce yourselves as we go, and we'll just go down the line this way. Kimmy, if you want to start for us.
I'm Kimmy Garcia. I am best known as the shorter half of the Beautiful Creatures writing duo, and I am the writer of the Teen Titans graphic novel series with Gabriel and Phillip.
I don't know how to. Should I keep my mask on? I'm Jeff. Hey guys, I'm best known for my work on Harley Quinn's DC's Harley Quinn, and then I'm doing a lot of great room stuff now too. So.
Hello everybody, my name is John. I own Level 7 Games in Denver. We're a local video game store. Woo! And yeah, it's fun.
Hey everybody, I am also John. I own All the Justice Comics in Parker, Colorado. And yeah, thank you. We were voted best comic store in Denver for 2022, so yeah! Hi, I'm Corbin Canton. I'm actually the motion capture producer for Deck 9 Games, so it's really funny following that last one.
Yeah, right, pretty awesome. Deck 9 Games, the Life is Strange games, right? They're working on The Expanse. Is that the next one coming up? Yeah. So if you ever played any of the Life is Strange games, you definitely know his work. So here's what I want to know. I want to know, because you all have such different jobs, what is your favorite part about your job? So being a writer, being an artist, and so on. And what is the hardest part about your job that people may not understand, especially our high school and middle school audience?
I mean, for me, the most fun is obviously all of my prose stuff, except for my X-Files book, are like original creator-owned. It's really fun to write graphic novels with DC because I get to play with characters that are not mine, and you know that was really fun. And the same, I have an X-Files book that Chris Carter made canon, and it's super fun for me to play in like universes and fandoms of things that I love. I think the hardest thing, I mean, for me, writing graphic novels is like super fun and easy because it's way more fun than writing prose, which is all words and really solitary and boring. But I think one thing that's hard for a lot of people who want to be writers to understand is I get a lot of people who tell me, you know, especially when I talk to high schools and stuff, like I want to be a fantasy author, but they've like read 2 fantasy books ever. If you want to be a writer, you need to read a lot. Comics, graphic novels, like you really need to know, like storytelling kind of gets absorbed in you. Just like, I mean, my husband also makes video games and so does my brother, but a lot of people who make games don't actually play games once they make them, but it's the same idea of like you want to be in video games, you gotta play video games, so if you want to be a writer, you gotta read.
Have any of y'all read the Teen Titans graphic novels? Like Raven and Beast Boy? Excellent, I love that.
They're really good. Artist is great.
Are we just going down the?
Yeah, we can just go down the line. What is your favorite part or the hardest part of your job?
My favorite part is just being left alone to draw. Because, and I'm an introvert, so like just shut in my basement, no interruptions, just drawing, and the hardest part is getting up and speaking.
Doing what we're asking you to do right now, yeah.
Because I'm like, these people, you know. But anyway, I just love to draw all the time, so it works out really well.
And now, Chad, before we keep going, before you do the art that you do now, doing art for comics, I know you've had other artist jobs for video games. Things like that. What else have you done?
I did video games. I did advertising for video games. I have what else? So I worked in development for a long time, and then I did advertising for a long time, and then I quit to do comics right at 2008. Best time ever to start your career in comics. But I will say this much: having 4 children and no income really incentivizes you to do really well drawing comics. So, you know, blessing and a curse. What are you gonna do?
John.
Right on. Well, I'd say my most favorite thing is probably the opposite of yours. because I like being around people all day. So I like being in my store, getting to meet new people, getting to see the same people, making new friends all the time is super awesome. I get to work with my friends, surrounded by the stuff that I really enjoy. So I mean, that's obviously super cool. As far as my least favorite part, I would say that it's probably steering the ship. You know, what's next? Like, you know, we just opened a new store last year, and deciding like what the next move is going to be is on me. And so I'm always trying to grow and think of like what's next for level 7. So that's probably the most difficult part, to decide on a route for everyone. So.
Anybody been to a level 7 games? I asked y'all earlier, but not while John was in the room, so I'm sure that's going to make you feel really great. Yeah.
I wish nobody would say that. You're all just like crickets.
Other John.
Other John. Okay, so I'm kind of like other John. That my favorite part of the day is dealing with people. Is my favorite thing ever is when I have people who aren't familiar with comic books come into the store and finding something that they're interested in that connects with it. You know, because it's tough. It's a hand sell. You know, what do you like? What do you do? This and that, the other thing. You find a book that they enjoy, and then they come back and they're like, "That was amazing. I need more." And so then there's a layer of trust that's built, and I can make more recommendations, and that's my favorite part. The hardest part is definitely, like Uncle John said, steering the ship. It's just, with COVID and the fractured distribution within the comic book industry, it's like we have our hands on new comics 5 out of 7 days a week, and it's not something that anybody ever sees because, you know, when you come in and ask for your hold slot, which are your comics that are on reserve, we hand it to you. But there's a lot of work that goes into that process, from ordering to receiving to making sure that things aren't damaged, and just that whole world. So there's my take.
Some of you might have already heard this about in the last one. Motion capture is just super cool. It's so fun, and the most fun we have is just figuring out how to shoot content that is integrates the game. Like, we're doing an Expanse game right now, and we have to figure out how are we going to do zero gravity in a very gravity heavy place. So we created like a rig to hoist up our actor. She used an aerialist, so she had really good core strength. We also had like, for all the fight scenes, we had like a little scooter, and we'll just have our actor on the scooter, and we actually oriented where they're going on this horizontal plane, but in the environment, they're going into the sky, you know? So finding out solutions to that and then actually pulling it off is so much fun. And like, actors can actually see themselves in real time, and they'll do like little dances and stuff. So that's the fun, but the most challenging is always like, and some of us have already touched on it, but it's just, the steering the ship is a very good, I guess it's just equivalent to a lot of different industries. Me as a producer, I'm facilitating to make sure that we can make this great product, but we also have to meet the deadline. Like, and when you work with a bunch of creators, a bunch of artists, like, you know, they want as much time as possible to make a product, and then we have another team that's dedicated to make sure, hey, we need to hit this by next month, so we gotta make decisions, we gotta keep moving. And it's a balance of that and the actual creative piece that really makes our games.
So what I'm hearing is that we have some of you that really love talking and working with people, and you found careers so you can do that. Whereas Chad, on the other hand, that's a big on you. It's like, man, I really love making art by myself, right? Which means that however your personality is, you can find these career paths that really lend themselves toward that. Now that being said, Chad, do you still have to work with a team in order to get your things accomplished?
Yes, you do, and you do. So you really have to know every aspect of the job. For example, I'm a photo writer. But I've found ways to compensate for that, and it's because I've seen what other artists who write comics do, and they just storyboard it out. And so I have enough storyboarding experience, I have enough cinematic experience that I can basically storyboard it out the same way a Disney movie would or a motion picture would, and then I can get feedback from writers, and so you learn to do things that you're bad at and be good at it and exercise those muscles. But the other reason why you have to know is because if there's a problem, especially right now, I'm doing a lot of career mode work, you have to have the empathy and you have to know that so that if something goes wrong, you have to know how to fix it, because it's just you. With creator owned, it's just you.
And would you mind explaining that to our kids, and whoever can? What is it, when you say creator owned, what does that mean?
So who likes Marvel and DC right now? Raise your hand. Woo! Right? Woo! Okay. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, but they have people that do everything for you. Like as an artist, all I gotta do when I work for Marvel and DC, they send me a script, I draw it, I send it back, and that's it. They do the publicity, they do the marketing, they do the distribution. They have someone letter it, they have someone color it. There's editors that check it for mistakes, okay? When you do your own comic, you do all of that stuff for free. And it's not fun, you know, so you gain an appreciation for the big publishers and all the stuff that they do, but at the same time, like, okay, who here has seen a movie with Harley Quinn in it? Okay? I love Harley. Harley's done, and I love the people I work with DC. But that's not my creation. Like even though I came in and it's sort of, and that's where I like made my career and I sort of busted my chops on that book. It's not my creation. And so when they do something creatively that erases like things you do, it hurts a little. So if you want to do something where you're in control and not somebody else is in control, then you might want to think about doing creative own books. But it's hard.
You have to have a lot of skills.
You have to have a lot of skills. You have to wear a lot of hats. But it's all. If you do it with the right people, it's a lot of fun. You do it with the wrong people, you lose all your hair.
See, but now you're down to one hat.
And Kimmy, I'd love to hear from you because I think a lot of times we have a vision of a writer as someone who's just solitary by themselves, typing away, right? Is that your reality for your job, or how do you work with it?
I'm involved in every aspect of the making of my books, except for the production, which are the people that actually make sure the files are the right size and make it into a book. I found Gabriel, when BC hired me, I already had a career. I had a career as a prose writer. They wanted regular book writers to come in and write the characters in a way that kids who didn't read comics and graphic novels would want to read the books. So that was my job. I came, and a lot of people think, oh, they give you the idea. I pitched the entire series. I came up with every aspect of it. I turned in a 30-page pitch for all 6 books, all the characters, the way it should roll out. And then once they hired me to do the series, they started sending me samples of art. And I liked the art, but it wasn't right. Because it's like a, you know it when you see it kind of thing. And one of the big things in my pitch was that the Teen Titans didn't wear costumes, they wore regular clothes. Because I wanted it to feel like Beast Boy could be at school with you and you wouldn't know. So I went on, I'm very old, I went on Pinterest and I hunted around.
No.
I am much older than everyone on this stage, I promise you. And I found this art by this guy named Gabriel Piccolo, who was doing fan art of DC characters, but they were wearing regular clothes. So I showed it to DC and they said, this is really nice, but this guy doesn't make graphic novels. And quite frankly, you haven't really done it either. And I said, well, I've been reading them my whole life and I know how to do it, so I have an editor, help me. So they hired him. So for all those people who say you can't get a job from doing fan art and it's a big waste of time and stuff, that is clearly not true. Gabriel is amazing. He was a professional though, like he had done posters and worked for people professionally, like he understood how to meet a deadline, which is really important. And we worked together, we chose the palette, the lettering styles, everything about the books. And I still do. I did the same thing with Constantine. I have a Constantine book coming out with Isaac Goodhart. I think the most important thing for me is always a lot of writers, and if you want to be a writer, it's really important to understand this. A lot of writers act like the artist is like their assistant, and that is not actually true. Most people read comics and graphic novels because of the art, not because of the writing. I hate to tell you, but it's true. And they are the show. They are the fancy ones, and my job is to write a script that will make my artist's art look amazing. So I have to work with my artists a lot, and I have them in all different countries, and that's my job. And so I feel like the better job I do of writing a script that makes my artist's art look better, the better I look because the book looks amazing and then everyone's like, you are the best writer of all time. And I get to bask in the glow of the compliment.
I love that. Now, earlier we heard from a couple of folk that they had very traditional career paths, or what we think of as traditional, right? For our Red Dead actors, they had gone to acting school, they were chasing the dream in LA, right? Victor, that we heard from earlier, went to art school before he started making comics, but not everyone has a straightforward career path, right? So I would love to hear from some of you how you ended up in these careers. Did you do I graduated high school, I went to college knew exactly what I wanted, and now that's what I do, or was it a little different?
Did you go to art school? Oh, okay.
I actually have a master's in art, but I want to warn you guys, it's a lot different than when I went. Okay, I have no idea how old you are, but I'm pretty big. And when I went to school, college was expensive, but it wasn't monstrous. And you have to be very, very, very careful today. One of the worst things you can do is start your life out owing a lot of money to the U.S. government that you can't get rid of. So what I would do is, if you want to go to a school to learn about art or to learn about writing, research the faculty, okay, and then go as cheaply as you possibly can without accruing a ton of debt. Beware of for-profit education, okay? It's a scam.
Can you give some examples of what a
Yeah, what is
for-profit?
Okay, so right now, they're forgiving up a lot of student debt, but they're actually doing it in a very smart way. They've gone to, you have two types of universities. You have universities that are basically sanctioned by the government, okay? And they're four state institutions, and they make sure, they try to do a good job of making sure that if you go to school there, that you don't get overwhelmed with student debt, and then you have privately held.
So it's like your state schools, right?
Right,
Your
your
state
state schools.
colleges, University of Colorado, or wherever.
Right, and then you have for-profit institutions like the Art Institutes, the Academy of Art College, SCAD, and these are phenomenal schools. But you have students walking out of there with $250,000 in debt. Now let me tell you something, as an artist, that's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. And I would rather see you get your education off of YouTube and from good books and from the local libraries that start your life out $25,000 in debt that you can't declare bankruptcy on.
Right.
So just be very, very, very careful.
It's worth saying, Gabriel's in Brazil. There's no art school in Brazil. It doesn't exist. He's 100% self-taught, and now he actually has Skillshare courses where you can learn from him at a much lower rate, and I know other artists do too, and a lot offer free tutorials online on their YouTube channels and stuff, and you can go on Twitch, which I don't really know what that is, but I know Jim Lee draws on that and teaches you how to draw, and I do not have an MFA. I was a teacher for 17 years. I wrote my first book on an accident for 7 of my students with my best friend, and going to fancy, school to get a Master's of Fine Arts, which is what you get if you're a writer, or screenwriting school, doesn't necessarily make you better or worse than anybody else. Some of the most gifted writers that I know and most famous did not go to school to become writers at all.
Yeah. Actually, you can be self-motivated and do just as well, if not better. Okay, but
What about motion capture? Do you need a degree for that? Because that seems like you probably need some special skills.
So actually, this is just to call myself out, I am in a lot of student debt. I've gone to school for 2 different schools to pursue what I was looking for. My career path is really unorthodox because when I was in high school, all I wanted to do was get into games. And then, but I didn't do research. I didn't apply myself. So I knew I wanted to get in a creative field. I went for an English major. But by pursuing that, I ended up falling in love with film. And my teacher, Kevin Chen, is amazing at the University of Northern Colorado. he just like created this spark in me where I knew I wanted to get into film. So I actually went to, again, to stay local, I went to the Colorado Film School. And the funny thing about Colorado Film School and any creative school, a lot of people are there to do creative things. So if you want to get production experience and get on set, you can't direct or write someone else's project usually.
Right.
So I picked a role called assistant director, which is basically that logistical person who's like right next to the director of photography, and he's the one that's helping facilitate all the different teams. We talked about team collaboration, all these people. My role and what I found I've been that for was actually just coordinating all these people to make a product, make a production. The Deck 9 Games is a local developer. They at the time, they were really early off on a game called Life is Strange Before the Storm. It was their first motion capture game, and that director was tired of making a schedule. So they reached out to the school looking for an assistant director, and I ended up getting picked. The thing about the film school and how I got that job though was my classes and my teachers only taught me so much. I have had this conversation with so many people. I gained the most knowledge in the field and in the industry just by applying myself. Taking all these different sets, like learning. My first assistant director role, I said yes to it, and I had no idea what I did. I was a glorified production assistant that was just
You like getting coffee?
Yeah. But I was fascinated by it, and I was like, I really want to learn what this position is. So I applied myself. I took on as many projects as I can. I started saying no to projects because I built a skill set. Everybody was asking me to work theirs, and I realized I really wanted to dedicate myself to like a quality product. And I just applied myself in that role, and that led me to where I am now. So, you know, it's a 10-year journey. I went from high school of wanting to get into games to not thinking I had any skill set, and then just accidentally finding myself in the industry I always wanted to be part of. So when you guys say research what you want to do, you gotta go find it.
How many people, is there anyone in here who wants to get into games? Any video games? Okay, well, I just want to say this is like, we're a video game family. My original writing partner is my children's godmother. Was probably one of the first women in games. She worked for Westwood Studios back in the day and made Command & Conquer, which was the predecessor of Civ. And my husband was a producer for Activision, for Disney. He made all of the Marvel movie games, Spider-Man, Ultimate Spider-Man. My brother got into video games. This is the easiest way to get into video games. He worked for Q&A. He tested games. He became a speed player. He was very fast. That's a really easy way to get attention. If you can play a game fast, because when you're in QA, you have to play the game like 20 times a day, and all the way through. So he went from he's 7 years younger than me, about 12 or 14 years ago, he went from being in QA to being an associate producer on all the Call of Duty games, to being at Raven Studios, which made some of the Call of Duty games, to being a lead producer on Fallout, and now he has just moved on. His company's making the new G.I. Joe game. And he has a college degree for some ridiculous thing I've never even heard of that has nothing to do with making video games.
Underwater basket.
And I was going to say, and my husband didn't even finish college, not suggesting that, but got into video games the same way he got in. He became a producer's assistant, not even associate producer, like the person who makes the schedule for the producer, and eventually was very, very good at his job and was promoted from within. So like I'm not saying you shouldn't major, there are universities that have it, but don't like feel like you have to go to college. Sometimes you just have to start at the bottom.
And just, so a lot of times I remember growing up, everyone was like, oh, I want to be a game tester. I want to play video games all day and just test video games. It is not nearly as glamorous as it sounds. But it is, like Kimmy said, a really great foot in the door. And that is going to be a theme that you might hear, is that for a lot of these industries that you want to get in, some of those bottom rung jobs are not going to be the most fun jobs, but it is a way to build those connections and get into where you do want to be. Because when you are testing video games, it's like, play this one level 18 times and look for these bugs and then put them in a spreadsheet, right? So it is not quite as fun as it sounds, but it can be very useful. I do, before we run out of time, I want to hear from both of our shop owners, what were kind of y'all's career paths to getting to, because that's a very different field.
It's a little different. It's a little different. I don't know about John, but I did do a little bit of college. I gave my shot at that, and it didn't follow that to completion, but I did actually get a lot of experience from that. I took a couple graphic design classes, which helped me with a lot of the marketing stuff in my store when I was getting going. Just some basic writing. Like, I tried 3 different times to go to college. So I went to 3 different colleges. I did community college, then Metro, then I did UCD for 3D animation. I tried that for a minute for 1 semester, it didn't work out. At the time, I was working a ton of retail jobs, and I worked a ton of electronics. I knew I wanted to do something in gaming, and I was good at retail, and I took all my experiences, you know, like these little college things that I had done, and although it wasn't the traditional path of like, here's what I want to do, from A to Z, I'm going to get this degree, and that's what I'm going to be. It was more of just, I was able to pick and choose the classes that I was interested in, and then apply them all into one big project that ended up being my stores. So, you know, the art aspect of it, the management aspect of it, the people aspect of it, the staffing and everything, it all kind of came together into a cool, like, amalgamous, like, big thing that I'm now, like, trying to, you know? But it's awesome. I love it. John?
So, I have a degree in biology with an emphasis in secondary education. I wanted to be a science teacher, and then I did my student teaching, and I hated teaching the standards, and so I found a job with a company who manufactured aquarium chemicals, and I was a sales rep for that company for 6 years, which was awesome because I got to travel the world and visit as many comic book stores as I could while I was on those trips. And then I eventually decided, you know, that Parker is southeast Denver, there wasn't anything there. We started off in a shop that was like 900 square feet, and I said, I think we can do this, you know, and we started there. We moved into about 2,200 square feet, and we're moving August 1st into a 6,600 square foot spot.
Yes.
So it's, you know, it was the right time, the right place. You'll hear it all the time. If you do something that you love, you'll never work a day in your life, which is absolutely a lie. If you do something you love, you will never work harder in your entire life, because I don't know, I'm sure you guys feel the same, hopefully, but it's you know, I give it my all, and it's a blast, and I love it, and I hate it. We have a sarcastic logo that says Yay Comics, because it's both a positive thing, because I love comics, but I hate them as much sometimes because of all the stuff that you got to deal with for it. But you just find something that you love and go after it.
Did you have to take like business stuff? Like I can't imagine myself trying to run a store or like pay people.
That's part of it. I have no business degree, so it's literally kind of making it up as we go. And thankfully, like, I don't know how the gaming industry is, but we have a really good group of comic book retailers in the Denver metro area, and a lot of us are friends outside of our stores. And so I can message other shops. I can say, hey, what are you guys doing for this? You know, Marvel used to do these gated incentives where if you met or exceeded a percentage of your previous order for some ridiculous title, then you could order this other thing. And so we would actually go in together as a group of store owners to hit those numbers so that everybody had access to this thing that was very limited. And so, you know, it's a lot of making it up as we go.
Gaming is less quality.
Okay.
All right, we are just about out of time, so I would love to hear last piece of advice for these middle and high school kids, whether they want to get into your career field or not, or just life advice. A quick little closing thing from each of you, and we don't have to go in order. If you've got something ready, feel free to jump in. But last piece of advice for our middle and high school students today.
Just don't let anyone discourage you and tell you can't do it. People will say that because they're jealous and they don't want to try for the thing they want. So just believe in yourself as you know, the best that you can.
And sometimes those people will be your parents.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true.
Or teachers, which is really sad.
You know, I have very supportive teachers. Are there teachers in here? Stand up. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, don't give up. Don't give up. Just do it. Keep doing it, and you'll be fine.
Chad said it earlier, but I think it's really paramount to any sort of success. Learn what you're bad at.
Yeah.
Don't rely on your strengths, because that will eventually fail you. Figure out what you're bad at that can complement what you're good at, and that will make you so much better at everything. So that's my one piece of advice.
And I'm gonna go off of what Cammie said. If you want to do something, just dive in, like go all in. Read comics, play video games, draw. You know, you're not going to do. If you truly love it, you've got to get a draw. You know, whatever it is, whatever you're into, because you know you'll see that in the final product.
And to that end, explore. Like, just explore the world. It's so big out there, and there's so many different passions. If you want to write, if you want to draw, if you want to paint, if you want to like help the artists do all that, you just explore it. Find it. Find what you just not just love, but what you like are really good at. Like, the world is your oyster, and it's such a journey. Like, there is no timeline on what you want to do with your life. So keep on exploring it there.
Can we give our guests one last round of applause?